This is A News. I'm Bakhtiar Sonova, and let's see the top stories. Iran and US peace talks stall, causing oil prices to rise. Israeli strikes kill 14 people in Lebanon amid fragile ceasefire. And Britain's King Charles and Queen Camilla will visit the United States, the first state visit to the country since 2007. Uncertainty is growing over peace talks between the United States and Iran as both sides show signs of stepping back from the direct engagement. As leaders on both sides issue retaliatory statements over stalled talks, a breakthrough remains unlikely. Here is more.
US President Donald Trump said he will no longer send delegations abroad to meet Iranian officials. Speaking to Fox News in an interview, he said Tehran should contact Washington directly if it is serious about negotiations. Trump also stressed that Iran must not develop a nuclear weapon, calling it a non-negotiable condition for any future talks.
If they want to talk, they can come to us or they can call us. You know, there is a telephone. We have nice secure lines, although I'm not sure any telephone line is secure, frankly. But we have secure lines, and if they want, we can talk. But we're not sending people to travel 18 hours to meet where you literally think of this. We had a meeting for Tuesday, and it was on Saturday that I was saying, when are we meeting? Tuesday, because it's so far. So great respect for Pakistan, but I will, because they've been terrific. They've really tried, and they'll stay involved. But we're going to do it by telephone. So if they want, they can call us.
On the Iranian side, President Masoud Pezeshkian criticized Washington's approach. He said continued pressure, including sanctions and what he described as hostile actions, is weakening trust. According to his office, these measures are making it harder to create the right conditions for diplomacy. At the same time, Iran's Foreign Minister Sayed Abbas Araghchi has been actively engaging with regional partners. During recent visits, including trips to Islamabad and Oman, he conveyed Iran's position through diplomatic channels. Reports from Iranian media say he delivered written messages outlining Tehran's red lines. These conditions are said to focus on Iran's nuclear program and strategic waterways, including the Strait of Hormuz, a key global oil route.
Now to Iran's growing diplomatic push across the region as efforts to ease tensions amid and revive talks with Washington remain uncertain. A News correspondent Turaj Shurelilo in Tehran has more.
The Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi arrived in Moscow on Monday after visiting Pakistan and Oman for discussions on bilateral ties as well as regional developments, including shaky ceasefire, Hormuz Strait standoff, and stalled talks with the US. Meantime, local news media affiliated to the Revolutionary Guards reported that over the weekend it delivered Tehran's messages to mediator Pakistan to be conveyed to US officials on a deal to end military standoff and reopen the strategic waterway, but postponed the talks on Iran's nuclear program. In comments broadcast on state IRIB TV, Araghchi said he is visiting Moscow to meet senior Russian officials and to continue close consultations between Tehran and Moscow on bilateral, regional, and international issues. Iran's top diplomat departed for Islamabad last Friday, where he met with Pakistani Premier Shahbaz Sharif, Army Chief Field Marshal Asim Munir, and Foreign Minister Mohammad Ishaq-Dar. Araghchi then flew to Muscat on Saturday and met with Sultan Haytham bin Tariq and Foreign Minister Badr al-Busaidi, who mediated between Tehran and Washington in 2025 by hosting rounds of indirect negotiations, which were halted by Israel-US attacks last June. He arrived in Russia after visiting Pakistan on Sunday for a second time and is expected to meet the Russian President Vladimir Putin in Kremlin, as well as Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Expressing satisfaction with the visits to Islamabad and Muscat, Araghchi said that meetings in Moscow are an opportunity to discuss the latest developments in the war. During his tour of Pakistan and Oman, Iran's top diplomat also held phone calls with his counterparts from Turkey, Egypt, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and France. Local media quoting Foreign Ministry news releases said their talks focused on bilateral ties, prospects of ceasefire, and stalled negotiations between Tehran and Washington. Turaj Shiralilu from Tehran for A News.
Now to the latest from the Israel-Lebanon border, and 14 people have been killed in southern Lebanon. Renewed hostilities are testing an already fragile ceasefire. Here is more.
Smoke was seen rising from southern Lebanon following airstrikes, with Lebanon's health ministry saying 14 people were killed on Sunday, including 2 children and 2 women, and at least 37 others were injured. Earlier, the Israel Defense Forces issued evacuation warnings for several villages, urging residents to leave immediately and warning their lives would be at risk if they stayed. The military also says a 19-year-old Israeli soldier was killed and 6 others wounded in a drone attack by Hezbollah inside Lebanon. Separately, Hezbollah launched 3 drones towards Israel, which the Israeli Air Force says were intercepted before crossing the border. Tensions had already escalated on Saturday when Benjamin Netanyahu ordered the military to vigorously target Hezbollah positions, just 2 days after the ceasefire was extended. At least 6 people were killed in strikes on southern Lebanon that same day. The violence comes despite a ceasefire between the 2 sides that took effect on April the 16th and was extended by 3 weeks last Thursday. Under the agreement, Israel says it retains the right to act in self-defense against imminent threats. Still, on Sunday, Israeli tanks and military convoys were seen moving along the northern border as thick smoke continued to rise across southern Lebanon. Further evacuation orders were issued for 7 towns north of the Litani River, outside the designated buffer zone, with Israel warning it would respond forcefully to what it calls ceasefire violations. Both Israel and Hezbollah have accused each other of breaching the truce since it came into force, underscoring how fragile the situation remains.
The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development said that restoring safety at the Chernobyl nuclear site after a Russian drone attack could cost at least 500 million euros. Its president said donors, including the European Union, France and Britain, had approved 30 million euros to fund urgent preparatory work and technical assessments on the damaged new safe confinement. Adding preliminary findings showed corrosion to the steel structure, which could threaten the long-term safety of the protective arch that was completed in 2019.
I'm very happy to see the commitment and the understanding from all partners participating to this meeting that this will be a shared effort, that this is a global interest to ensure nuclear safety and to cooperate on this issue, and already some first outcome with the signing of this 30 million euros with the Chernobyl plan that will allow preliminary work to stabilize the situation and further study also to prepare for the full-fledged reparation that should be done before 2030 and should start practically by the beginning of 2028.
Turning now to the markets, where energy prices are once again fluctuating, keeping the sector in focus amid ongoing geopolitical tensions. Here is more.
Oil prices have climbed noticeably on Monday as stalled US-Iran peace talks continue to disrupt energy flows from the Middle East and unsettle global markets. Brent crude rose by more than 2% in early Asian trading, briefly hitting a 3-week high of around $107.97 a barrel. The gains have added to inflation concerns, with traders now largely ruling out any near-term interest rate cuts. This came after the US West Texas Intermediate crude for June delivery that fell by $1.45, or around 1.5%, to settle at $94.40 a barrel on the New York Mercantile Exchange. Meanwhile, liquefied natural gas prices for delivery into Northeast Asia have surged to around $16.70 per million British thermal units, roughly 60% higher than before the conflict began. The moves come as attention remains focused on the Strait of Hormuz, a key global shipping route for energy supplies, which has been disrupted by wider tensions linked to the United States, Israel and Iran conflict. Although a ceasefire has largely paused direct fighting, the broader standoff between Washington and Tehran remains unresolved.
Global gas markets are back under pressure as ongoing supply disruptions in the Middle East drive prices higher. The International Energy Agency is warning that the turbulence could last for years.
The International Energy Agency says the global natural gas market has been sharply upended by the ongoing conflict in the Middle East, and that it's triggering a major supply shock and renewed volatility. At the center of the disruption is the Strait of Hormuz, where restrictions on shipping since early March have effectively removed nearly a fifth of the global supply of liquefied natural gas from the market. That sudden squeeze has sent prices climbing. In March, gas prices across Europe and Asia surged to their highest levels since early 2023, reversing months of strong supply growth. Earlier this year, markets were stabilizing. New liquefaction capacity, particularly in North America, helped push global LNG trade up by double digits, while prices dropped significantly through the winter heating season. But that progress has now been undone. The IEA says global LNG production fell by 8% year on year as exports from key producers in the Gulf dropped sharply. Supply losses have only been partially offset by supplies from other regions, but the disruption is now rippling through global delivery chains. Demand for LNG is also slowing down. Higher prices, milder weather, and policy measures are curbing gas use, with Europe seeing a year-on-year decline and Asian buyers turning to alternative fuels where possible. Even so, recent cold snaps across major economies have highlighted a key vulnerability: the continued reliance on a flexible gas supply to back up renewable energy systems. Looking ahead, the outlook remains tight. Damage to liquefaction infrastructure in Qatar is expected to slow the next wave of global LNG expansion, delaying new supply growth by at least 2 years. The IEA estimates this could leave a cumulative shortfall of around 120 billion cubic meters of LNG between 2026 and 2030, prolonging market strain into the latter part of the decade. The agency says the crisis underscores the need for stronger investment across the LNG supply chain and closer coordination between producers and consumers to manage future shocks and stabilize global energy markets.
Israeli opposition leader Yair Lapid and former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett have launched a new political alliance aimed at challenging Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government ahead of Israel's next election. Announcing the move in Herzliya, they described it as a patriotic step at a critical time, promising a platform centered on national unity and reform. Bennett outlined plans for a commission of inquiry into the October 7th attacks, compulsory military service for all citizens, and an 8-year limit on any future premiership. Lapid urged moderate voters to support Bennett, describing the alliance as a legal and responsible alternative to the current leadership. Britain's King Charles is set for a high-stakes visit to the United States as he seeks to reinforce the special relationship amid growing tensions between the two allies.
Britain's King Charles will travel to the United States this week for the most high-profile visit of his reign, aiming to reinforce the allies' special relationship strained by the Iran war to its lowest point in decades. The royal couple will visit Washington, D.C., New York and Virginia between 27th and 30th April. The state visit coincides with the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Declaration of Independence, when 13 colonies broke from King George III, Charles's ancestor. For Charles, the trip highlights how the two nations have since built close security, military and economic ties, while for U.S. President Donald Trump, it offers another chance to showcase his affinity for the British royal family. On the other hand, the visit comes amid the most serious tension since the 1956 Suez Crisis, with Trump criticizing British Prime Minister Keir Starmer over his refusal to join strikes on Iran and questioning Britain's military strength.
A Japanese coastal town still marked by the 2011 tsunami is now facing a new disaster. Wildfires have been burning for days, pushing firefighters and volunteers to their limits. Here is our report.
In northeastern Japan, the small coastal town of Otsuchi is once again facing a natural disaster. More than a decade after a deadly tsunami destroyed homes and claimed lives, a fast-moving wildfire is now threatening the community. For 6 days, the blaze has burned over 1,600 hectares of forest. Among those on the front lines is 31-year-old volunteer firefighter Ryota Haga. He was a high school student when, during the 2011 earthquake and tsunami which swept away his family home. Today, he is battling flames along steep mountain slopes with little rest.
Up to now, I've responded to a few incidents, like forest or hillside fires, but those were cases where the fire could be put out quickly or brought under control in a pretty short time. This is the first time I've encountered a situation where the fire is still not out, even after more than 2 days. Physical fatigue is setting in. The soles of a lot of people's feet are hurting, including mine. After all, we're climbing mountain slopes where there are basically no paths. It's almost like a wall in places.
Around 1,400 firefighters from across Japan have been deployed, along with Self-Defense Force helicopters. Crews are using hoses and portable pumps to fight the fire. Local fire teams are already understaffed, raising concerns about how long they can sustain the fight. For residents here, the wildfire is not just another disaster. It is a test of resilience in a town that has already endured so much.
Members of the Turkish-American community have protested against New York Mayor Zoran Mamdani over remarks he made about the 1915 events. They are accusing him of taking a one-sided stance on a sensitive historical issue.
The Turkish-American community in New York says the mayor of a city representing diverse cultures and ethnic groups cannot make controversial statements that risk alienating its citizens. They gathered to protest Mayor Zoran Mamdani's post on X regarding the events of 1915. Mamdani wrote that Azerbaijan and Turkey attacked the Armenian population in Karabakh and alleged that Armenians were expelled from the region. In a written statement, community organisers strongly rejected Mamdani's remarks and said the events of 1915 to 1923 should be assessed in light of historical facts. They accused the New York mayor of taking a side in a sensitive historical and political issue.
Following the apprehension of a gunman at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, officials now say members of U.S. President Donald Trump's administration could have been possible targets. Our correspondent Ubi Shibander has more from Washington, D.C.
The White House released a statement on Sunday saying that President Trump stands fearless after the third assassination attempt against the president, which took place on Saturday during the White House Correspondents' Dinner event. The 31-year-old gunman is believed to have been deliberately attempting to target members of the Trump administration, according to officials in Washington. New details have emerged on how the failed assassin was able to get so close to the star-studded event where most of the Trump administration's senior officials were attending. Officials also believe that the gunman took a train from California to Washington and checked into the hotel where the Correspondents' Dinner was taking place the night prior. He was armed with a shotgun, a handgun, and multiple knives, according to police reporting. In an interview with the press on Sunday, President Trump called the gunman a, quote, very troubled guy with a lot of hatred in his heart. A manifesto believed to belong to the failed assassin was publicly released, and it indicated that the violent act was politically motivated. One Secret Service agent was lightly wounded when the attacker attempted to run past an internal security checkpoint in the hotel where the dinner that celebrates freedom of speech was held. And questions are swirling on whether security at the venue was sufficient, given that the president and most of his cabinet would be attending. The attack has raised serious concerns that President Trump continues to face politically motivated assassination attempts. Many in Washington are now calling for the funding of the building of a new ballroom connected to the White House, where such events can be held in the future under tighter security. Chief of Staff to the President, Susie Wiles, is convening a meeting early this week with the White House operations team, U.S. Secret Service, and Department of Homeland Security leadership to discuss protocol and practices for major events involving President Trump. I'm Ubi Shibander, A News, Washington.
Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll cover the Washington incident involving the White House correspondent's dinner shooting. Stay with us. Welcome back to A News. Let's continue our coverage with more in-depth analysis. A security breach unfolded in Washington, D.C. this Saturday as President Donald Trump was evacuated from the annual White House Correspondents' Dinner after a gunman opened fire near a security checkpoint. Authorities say the suspect is in custody. A federal agent was injured but protected by a bulletproof vest, and early findings suggest the attack may have been aimed at administration officials. The White House Correspondents' Dinner is a high-profile annual gathering bringing together senior U.S. political leaders, journalists, and public figures, traditionally symbolizing the relationship between the press and the presidency. To help us understand the political and security implications of this incident, we're joined by Enrique Casero, political analyst joining us from Madrid, Spain. Mr. Casero, welcome and thank you for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
Mr. Casero, how significant is this security breach at such a high-profile and heavily protected political event? And what does this incident reveal about current security vulnerabilities in Washington, D.C.?
I mean, I think that media and talking heads and pundits are making more noise that I think is needed to be done. I think that the assassination attempt back in Pennsylvania during the campaign was highly more dangerous or more risky in terms of security, but we have to consider it back then that guy, that sniper shooter, and placed in a roof of a building next to the place where Donald Trump was rallying. He was identified. He was watched. He was watched with a rifle. But there is a very large concern in these terms, because if the guy does not pull the trigger, does not shoot, then what is the evidence of the assassination attempt? Or he is going to try to commit an assassination. So that was very, very hard. I don't think at that moment in Pennsylvania the security corps or the security the security detail assigned to the president, to the then candidate, was acting in the best manner. But yesterday last Saturday, during the correspondents' dinner, I think that we've seen some footage of the claimed to be a killer running all along the corridors of the Beverly Hills. Of the Hilton Hotel in Washington, D.C., and some agents were reacting, what we can say, very slowly. But at the end, the guy was catched. So the security get the part, and they did their thing in order to arrest the guy and alive, which is more impressive, if you want to call it that way. So there are security concerns, because there are always security concerns, but this was an open, by invitation, but an open public event. So it wasn't that hard that some guy, fast as we see the suspected killer to be, was. So I think the security detail react very, in a properly manner. The Washington D.C. police as well, they evacuated J.D. Vance as we saw in the on the footages, and the President Trump was trying to keep the calm, and at a point that you can discuss with the security detail in order to be evacuated. So I think there are more concern put on whatever happened that it really worked. But it's the third time, and I don't know. This sort of things taken by what we can consider a madman or a radicalized guy are making more noise that the federal government wanted to.
Mr. Casera, could this incident lead to a full review of security protocols for political and media events in the United States?
I think that after any situation, any different episode that we can see around the security involving the president or the presidential family or the vice president or any member of the cabinet, some sort of debrief is done. So next time is going to be harder, it's going to be tougher for anyone to want to repeat or trying to attempt against the life of those people. I think this debrief are going to make the things harder and harder and harder. Probably they're not going to be infallible, but they're going to be. Of course, it's going to be harder. And if we see another attempt, we're gonna start to make the same questions. I mean, we have to remember Charlie Kirk, and Charlie Kirk was killed by a guy with a sniper gun. Well, not a sniper one, with a regular rifle from a rooftop, and that's it. I mean, Charlie Kirk were completely unprotected. He was with no security detail, and right now the Secret Service are debriefing in order to understand what happened and why the guy was running freely through the corridors of the Hilton Hotel. And it's not, as I said, next time is going to be harder, and the next time is going to be harder. I don't know for how many more times the Secret Service is gonna be fitted to protect the president this way, or probably we have to remember that this is the first time that Donald Trump goes to this correspondent dinner, which used to be a very popular dinner in Washington D.C. But probably this is going to make Donald Trump more prone to not going the next year than going, and that's going to be the highest level of security that he's going to get.
So in your view, how might this incident affect the already tense relationship between Donald Trump and the press?
As I said, it was the first time that Donald Trump assisted this correspondent dinner, because the Donald Trump was always so I don't want to say contrary to the press, but for once the guy goes to this big event, as I said, because it's a very big event. It's so big that is the only on purpose moment of the year when the president wants to be funny again in front of a big audience. But I think it's not. Nothing's going to change, because afterwards the president gave an interview with CBS in 60 Minutes, if I remember correctly, and the struggle and the back and forth and the difference, let's gonna call it considerations, from the presidents to the journalists were taking place, and the insults and the opinions, the adjectives and the qualifications were as usual and as regular as ever been with Donald Trump. So this is not going to change the relationship with the press. This is what I think this is going to make, as I said before, The only thing that this is going to make is probably that Donald Trump is not going to attend the next years.
Enrique Casero, thank you very much for talking to A News. We truly appreciate your time and analysis. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. After the break, we'll take a look at the key stories shaping the region. Welcome back to A News, and now we turn to our regional stories. Ruling Justice and Development Party officials in Turkey were briefed that the PKK has not shown concrete steps toward disarmament on the ground. Analysts say uncertainty remains over whether the stalled process can move forward in the coming weeks. Adam Moro has more.
Turkish intelligence chief Ibrahim Kalin has told ruling party officials that there has been no meaningful progress in the PKK disarmament process, other than what he called symbolic steps. According to sources within the ruling Justice and Development Party, Kalin briefed party officials over the weekend, saying there was no concrete evidence that the PKK had laid down its weapons. Sources quoted in Turkish media said the organization still exists, adding that there was no material indication of full disarmament on the ground. Designated a terrorist group by Turkey, the United States, and the European Union, the PKK has carried out a deadly armed insurgency against the Turkish state for 4 decades. In recent months, Ankara has promoted a peace and disarmament process aimed at ending the conflict, with imprisoned PKK leader Abdullah Öcalan publicly calling for the group to lay down its arms and disband. However, AK party sources say the group's leadership in northern Iraq has yet to comply with the jailed leader's appeal. Officials also point to the regional war between Iran and the United States, describing it as a complicating factor in the disarmament process. They say the ongoing war has altered the group's expectations and delayed the next phase of the process, including planned legal reforms. One source said they had expected to move into the legal regulation phase this month, but the Iran factor had changed the situation. According to analysts, the coming weeks will be critical in determining whether the stalled process can regain momentum. This is Adam Moro for A News in Istanbul, Turkey.
Czech Prime Minister Andrej Babiš is on an official visit to Azerbaijan, where he met President Ilham Aliyev in Gabala for both one-on-one and expanded talks. The discussions focused on energy cooperation, especially natural gas, with both sides stressing stronger economic ties. During a joint press statement, Ilham Aliyev called Azerbaijan a reliable energy exporter, supplying gas to several countries, including EU members, while Babiš described Azerbaijan as a strategic partner with friendly relations. The leaders also reviewed wider cooperation, including potential industrial and defense projects. The Media Development Agency of Azerbaijan, together with other university and the WUF 13 Azerbaijan operating company, has held an information session aimed at giving journalists a deeper understanding of the upcoming World Urban Forum. Organizers say the goal is to move beyond basic awareness and clearly explain the role of WOOF 13 as a global platform for dialogue. They added that the media plays a key role in this process, ensuring the public is informed through accurate, fact-based and responsible reporting. This marks the second such session, highlighting what officials describe as a structured and strategic approach to preparations.
The role of the media in this dialogue is to ensure that the public is informed through accurate, fact-based and responsible reporting. I would particularly like to note that this is already the second such information session organized by us. This demonstrates that the preparation process for WUF 13 is being carried out in a systematic and strategic manner. While the first session focused more on presenting the overall framework, today's meeting addressed specific thematic areas. Topics such as urban development, inclusivity, green transport and strategic planning were explained in detail.
Azerbaijani servicemen have joined preparations for the next phase of the FS 2026 multinational drill in Turkey. The military exercise is being held in Istanbul and Izmir, with the upcoming stage focused on live-fire practical training. The Azerbaijani contingent was welcomed at Jigli Air Base. FS 2026 is designed to improve coordination among participating units during large-scale operations and strengthen practical combat skills. A meeting in Kabul between Afghanistan's National Disaster Management Authority and the International Organization for Migration focused on strengthening emergency response systems. Discussions also covered improving shelter support and advancing ongoing relief and reconstruction efforts in several provinces. Tamim Bahi says more.
Officials here in Kabul said the meeting between the head of the National Disaster Management Authority, Nuruddin Turabi, and International Organization for Migration Chief Mehang Park marks a renewed push to scale up disaster preparedness across the country. According to an official statement, both sides highlighted the urgent need to improve emergency assistance, expand shelter support, and strengthen disaster risk reduction programs. Turabi described the IOM as a key partner in construction, preventive projects and emergency relief, while also noting that recruitment of new volunteers is progressing rapidly and expected to be completed soon, with calls for greater support for these teams. He also emphasized the importance of the National Disaster Management Information System, calling it a vital tool in strengthening coordination and community resilience. For her part, Mehang Park praised the strong cooperation between the two organizations and said she has directed her teams to intensify collaboration, aiming to build a more effective national disaster response mechanism. Park also confirmed that previously stalled projects in Paktia province have now resumed and are expected to be completed soon, while shelter construction for earthquake-affected communities in Kunar province is ongoing. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, A News.
Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan are moving forward with the construction of the Kambarata HPP-1 hydropower plant. It will be located on the Narin River in Kyrgyzstan. It's a major regional energy project that is expected to strengthen electricity security across Central Asia. Our correspondent in Uzbekistan has more.
Three Central Asian countries, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, are preparing to launch the construction of the Kambarata HPP-1 hydropower plant, one of the region's largest joint energy projects. The station will be built on the Narin River in Kyrgyzstan with a capacity of 1,880 to 2,000 megawatts. That is enough to supply electricity to up to 1.5 million households. The president of Kyrgyzstan, Sadyr Japarov, described the project as strategically important during the Regional Ecological Summit in Astana. He said that active negotiations are underway to finalize the agreement with the support of the World Bank and other international financial institutions. The project will cost an estimated $4.2 billion, while the broader financing portfolio with international partners is expected to reach $5.6 billion. From 2026, Kyrgyzstan will cover 34% of the project costs, while Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan will each finance 33%. Electricity generated by the station will be distributed among the three countries according to their shares. The sides also agreed to establish a separate joint stock company in Kyrgyzstan to manage the construction and future operations of the plant. Officials say Cambrata HPP1 will help reduce seasonal electricity shortages and support long-term sustainable development in the region. It is Sivil Vajap reported from Tashkent, Uzbekistan A News.
China is strengthening its energy partnership with Turkmenistan through a major new gas project. A multi-billion-dollar deal will expand one of the world's largest gas fields and increase supplies to China. But Turkmenistan is also signaling plans to reach European markets in the future. Our correspondent Fariza Kalimurzina has more.
A $4.6 billion contract has been awarded to China's China Petroleum Engineering to build new infrastructure at the Galkonesh gas field in Turkmenistan. The deal is part of a broader agreement between CNPC and Turkmengas moving forward the fourth stage of development at one of the world's largest gas fields. The project includes construction of gas processing facilities and the drilling of new production wells. Work is expected to begin this year with completion in just over 4 years. Turkmenistan currently supplies around 30 billion cubic meters of gas to China each year. The new phase is expected to add another 10 billion that will expand flows through the pipeline system that has been operating for more than 16 years across Central Asia. Turkmen officials say the project will be financed from state resources, while the Reuters news agency estimates the total cost could reach $5.1 billion. The deal builds on long-standing energy cooperation between Ashgabat and Beijing. CNPC has been involved in developing Galkonesh since 2009, when it secured access to the field and became one of its key foreign partners. Turkmenistan is also looking beyond China. At the Antalya Diplomacy Forum, Foreign Minister Rashid Meredov said gas exports to Europe remain a priority, with Galkonesh seen as a potential source. And according to the energy consultancy Gaffney Klein, reserves at the field and nearby structures are estimated at around 27.4 trillion cubic meters. Fariza Kalimurzina, Almaty, A News.
Now we'll take a short break. Right after the break, we'll discuss Turkey's mediation diplomacy and the upcoming NATO summit in Ankara. Stay tuned. Welcome back to A News. Turkey is stepping up its diplomatic role at a time of heightened global tension. Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan has been actively engaging with key counterparts, including Iran's Abbas Araghchi and Pakistan's Mohammad Ishaq Dar, as efforts continue to revive dialogue between Iran and the United States. These contacts come amid fragile ceasefire arrangements and stalled negotiations, underscoring Ankara's ambition to position itself as a regional mediator. At the same time, attention is also turning to the upcoming NATO summit in Ankara this July, where Volodymyr Zelensky has confirmed that Ukraine will be represented, though the format remains unclear. The summit is expected to focus heavily on security architecture, the war in Ukraine, and NATO's evolving strategic posture. To help us unpack these developments, we are joined by Associate Professor Dr. Shuay Açıkalan from Ankara, Hacı Bayram Veli University, speaking to us from Ankara. Professor Açıkalan, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Professor Açıkalan, how do you assess Turkey's recent diplomatic outreach led by Hakan Fidan in the Iran-US negotiation process? And what leverage does Turkey realistically have in facilitating dialogue between Tehran and Washington? Now we'll have a short break. Right after the break, we'll talk to our guest. Welcome back to A News. Now we continue our discussion with Professor Şuay Açıkalın. Professor Açıkalın, how do you assess Turkey's recent diplomatic outreach led by Hakan Fidan in the recent Iran-US negotiation process? And what leverage does Turkey realistically have in facilitating dialogue between Tehran and Washington?
Thank you very much. Actually, Turkey has been a kind of playing a facilitator role even before the conflict was started, because Turkey tried to hinder that kind of the conflict in the region. But of course, after the conflict was started, Turkey was clearly playing a role between between the Iran and the Gulf region to basically to stop any escalation within any regional crisis. But at the same time, Turkey has playing a kind of another both mediator and the facilitator role along with the Pakistan and related countries between Iran and the United States. Of course, the leverages issue is also very important, because the effectiveness of Turkey's position as a mediator depends on the leverage, but it's also clear that these leverages are not only on the table, but also everyone's are aware of the Turkey's mediating position has been much more fruitful in the long term to create or stop to any possible regional and even the global conflict that rose from the potentially, or I can say, from the Iran and the United States escalation in the region.
Professor Açıkalın, the earlier round of talks in Islamabad failed to produce results. What are the main sticking points preventing a breakthrough?
In this point, the position regarding the Turkey's mediation and of course the important points directly depends on what has been mediating between the United States and Iran for long term as a nuclear program, and of course, but in the reality, not only the nuclear programs, but right now because of the Hormuz crisis, it turns to be a kind of the combined agenda that we can see the mediation process, because before the conflict started, it's clearly says that most of the agenda has been shaped by the nuclear programs and the missile programs, but right now the Hormuz crisis turns to be the top of the priority for both sides.
So how important is Pakistan's role as a mediator, and how does it intersect with Turkey's diplomatic efforts?
Well, Pakistan and Turkey has lots of commonality when it comes to the mediation, and the last participation of the Prime Minister Shahbaz in Antalya Diplomacy Forum also proved that Turkey and Pakistan has a common position and a common expectation from both sides. And Pakistan has a clearly good relations with the American administration, and also directly one of the countries directly talk with the Iranian government as well. So it makes Pakistan in the front line to make a perfect mediator, but at the same time, together with the Turkey, it also clearly shows that not only the Pakistani mediation, but also together with the Turkey, it's a strong mediation in the behind of the diplomatic tables.
So turning to NATO, what does it mean strategically for Turkey to host the upcoming summit in Ankara?
Of course, every year the NATO summit, especially the leader summit part, seems to be one of a kind of milestone in the NATO history to give the shape of the NATO next upcoming years, the vision and the mission. Of course, this year, along with under the shadow of the Russian-Ukrainian war, Iranian crisis, and other regional crises, and Turkey's geopolitical position, and the strong military and the defense capability make more meaningful for the other partners and the members of the NATO. And there's a clear expectation to see some of the concrete direction in the NATO leaders summit that has been seen or as an outcome after this summit. But of course, especially there are some also focus on the deepening the cooperation between the European counterparts, and the Turkey's defense sector seems to be one of the leading topic in the summit.
So Ukraine's representation remains unclear. What message does this ambiguity send within NATO?
Ukraine has a clear ultimate goal to be part of the NATO and, of course, the European Union. But right now, they are currently still under the war. Of course, NATO has a clear position in this war. But the possible Ukrainian membership, or regarding the debates over the Ukrainian membership to NATO, is a still question mark. And everyone knows that some of the NATO members, like Poland and Hungary, has a opposite political stand regarding the Ukrainian NATO membership. So in this respect, there's still 2 months along with the ahead of the NATO summit in Turkey. So we will see how it will happen. But at the same time, it also means that how the NATO situate itself under the shadow of this war regarding the regional crisis, not only in the Ukraine, but also in the different region as well.
Professor Açıkalın, looking ahead, can Turkey simultaneously maintain credibility in both Western alliances and regional mediation efforts?
Of course, I mean, Turkey has a capability to mediate in the different conflicts, not in our region as well, from Africa to Middle East. It's a very broad range. We have been so experienced in terms of the mediation, but at the same time, Turkey is a very influential NATO member, and Turkey has been influential member in the different international organizations. So in terms of this, and as the component of the leader diplomacy that has been conducted by the President Erdogan, make Turkey as almost a perfect mediator for the both sides. But we will see in the upcoming weeks. We hope that there will be peace, at least a kind of the peace agreement that comes from the Iranian and the US talks. But in some sense, in the world, I guess Turkey has been one of the experienced mediators. Along with it is the human resources capability and the diplomatic and the military leverages they have.
Professor Açıkalın, thank you very much for joining us and sharing your insights. We truly appreciate your time and expertise. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. This concludes our news update for the hour. Thank you for your time and stay with us.